Talking about the Golden Rule during the celebrations dedicated to the Day of Knowledge is justified by the fact that we are talking about a fundamental moral. The formula of humanity, a kind of eternal theme. Since the topic is eternal, it means that it is always topical. In fact, there is at least one more reason that gives it additional relevance. In the modern world, within the framework of the processes called globalization, conflicts motivated by religious, ethical and other cultural and civilizational differences have sharply increased. They take on sizes and shapes that make it possible to talk seriously about a collision. Civilizations that threaten the very existence of mankind. The only one. An alternative to such a dangerous development is the dialogue of cultures. The dialogue of cultures is a reality, a living, complex, multifaceted process of theoretical and practical searches. He can only be successful to the extent that will acquire personally significant forms, take root in the moral culture of everyday life. All cultures in their religious and ethical foundations proceed from the same humanistically oriented and individually responsible strategy of behavior, which is embodied in a requirement called the Golden Rule, and became a universal moral, the formula of humanity. When considering the genesis and early evidence of the Golden Rule of morality, three things are surprising. First, it is formulated in a similar, almost identical way by different thinkers who did not know about each other. Secondly, it arose at the dawn of civilization, in the middle of the first millennium BBE. It is characterized by a broad universal outlook, a certain, can be said to be humanistic completeness, to which there is nothing to add, even in the era of globalization. Thirdly, it occurs approximately in one and the same time in different cultures, the connection between which at that stage is unlikely, and in any case not certified in any way. How to explain these oddities? The coincidence of the wording, in our opinion, is due to the elementary nature of the Golden Rule. It is elementary not only in the sense of simplicity, obviousness, but also in the sense in which the early philosophers spoke of the elements, understanding by them the fundamental principles of being. The Golden Rule is the fundamental principle of a spiritually practical life. And in this capacity it represents the truth that, as if it glows from the inside and is given ready-made. Coincidence of wording, in this case, should surprise us as little as the fact, for example, that twice 2 always and everywhere 4. As for the humanistic completeness of the Golden Rule here, the following explanation can be offered. Social ideals and humanitarian strategies are constructed primarily and, as a rule, from the opposite. Their historical stability, inspiring strength and value are determined not by the fact that they penetrate deeply into the future and reproduce its adequate the picture, just in this respect in their positive programs. They turn out to be lifeless utopias, and the fact that they break with the past, precisely marking the lines of break with it. Their strength lies not in perspicacity, but in revolutionary spirit. They provide a general critical disposition in relation to reality. The Golden Rule in a reduced form contains an ethical strategy of behavior formulated in contrast and in opposition to the moral foundations of the primitive, pre-civilizational tribal system of life, which was based on 2 fundamental principles: the initial, unconditional division of people into ours and others, the collective responsibility of individuals within the tribal community. An idea of the moral practice of primitive people can be given, for example, by the custom of blood feud with its rigid eye for an eye, life for life, during the denial and overcoming of which, as possible, to assume directly, and the Golden Rule arises. Golden Rule. sets a moral perspective in which both of these principles are radically eliminated. In contrast to them, equality of people is formulated regardless of their group affiliation. And the principle of individual responsibility of behavior is affirmed. The simultaneous appearance of the Golden Rule in different cultures is explained by the typological similarity of the eras that these cultures experienced. It was the so-called axial time when a humanistic, a breakthrough in history and the formation of universal human norms of culture. The essence of the spiritual upheaval that took place at that time can be briefly described as the discovery of man. The Golden Rule arises when a person from knowledge, the world, moves to self-knowledge, radically rethinks its place in the world, shifting from its periphery to the very center. Consider the meaning of the Golden Rule in European material. The early Greek philosophers were naturalists. The principle of being, which a physical, natural meaning was attached, they were considered at the same time as the guiding basis of human behavior. So, the fire of Heraclitus, governing the universe, also determined the qualities of the human soul. The Sophists broke with this tradition. The famous thesis of Protagoras, according to which man is the measure of all things that exist, that they exist, and that do not exist, that they do not exist, laid the foundation for a fundamentally different understanding. He meant that the canons of human life are not determined by nature. On the contrary, man himself is a reference point in relation to nature. He acts on the basis and within his subjective world, recalling, in this respect, the inhabitants of the besieged city. Even if the statements of Protagoras cannot be understood in such a way that man began to be considered as a center world, then it is absolutely certain that he was isolated from the world, as if, using expression of Spinoza, state within a state. According to the Sophists, the nature and world of human institutions, customs, laws, inventions, later called the Latin word culture, are fundamentally different from each other in at least two respects. First, the world of culture is variable, it changes from people to people, from generation to generation, and the laws of nature, including the laws of the natural existence of people, are always and everywhere the same. So people understand good in different ways, and evil, but they breathe the same. Secondly, the cultural form is what is introduced people into the world of things, is in relation to them external, random, arbitrary. And the laws of nature are inseparable from them, act inevitably. Illustrating this difference, Antiphon said that if you plant an olive in the ground, then an olive will grow. And if you plant a bench made of olive in the ground, the bench will not grow, the olive will grow again. The question arises, what determines the extranatural world of culture? What is its constitutive basis, or, in other words, its criterion, guided by which it was possible to compare its different manifestations, giving preference for some human institutions over others? In reflecting on these questions, the Sophists, along with their famous opponent, Socrates, made a great discovery that can truly be considered the discovery of man. They came to the conclusion the defining basis of the supernatural and natural world of culture is the relationship between people, to the extent that how they depend on their conscious and responsible decisions. Thereby, the boundaries and space of the human world proper were determined. The world of humanity. In contrast to the boundaries and space of the physical, natural world. The discovery of a second unnatural nature, which is fixed in culture, and is determined by the nature of relations with people, has become a colossal challenge for a person. It meant that a person is not a fact, but a problem that is what he, different from natural things. And the question of what a person is and what is his place in the world has transformed, turned out to be connected and even subordinated to the question of what he should do with himself and the world. If everything depends on the relationship between people in the sense that they are the determining basis and the main subject of their conscious activity, then how to take them under responsible control? To give them a perfect look, how to make sure that the world of culture that decorates and consolidates them is adequate to the human desire for the good, so that he could compensate this world, overcome the misfortunes that arise from the frailty of the natural existence of man. These are the questions that determined the main direction of philosophical and humanitarian reflections and spiritual searches of European culture. Within this framework, one of the key questions has become the question of the moral quality of interhuman relations. The answer that was found and in fact became only formulation of that fundamental truth that determines the basis of the world. Culture is the relationship of people to each other, was that these relationships should be characterized by reciprocity. It is the reciprocity of relations that coincides with their being and confirms them as an existential basis. The human world of culture characterizes their moral quality, and together, therefore, the moral boundaries and the perspective of the formation of a person, his history. As a history of culture, a short formula for the reciprocity of personal, public relations, their humanity, and became the golden rule of morality. It decodes reciprocity as such a person's relationship to other people when he treats them as he would like them to treat him.